Hey, what's going on, MBT movement community? It's Sheldon, your host here, joining you for another episode. Really excited to bring you my guest here today. I have Mr. Jacob Greer. He is a Savage PhD candidate, and he is currently studying health behaviors and wellness education. He's also the creator of Beyond Burnout Collective, where he helps high-achieving educators, executives, and entrepreneurs eliminate burnout using evidence-based strategies. And the thing about the whole evidence-based approach is, people like myself and Jacob is we make it very practical. Jacob Greer, he is a PhD candidate, and he also had an experience of overcoming severe burnout during his first year of doctoral studies. And that's sort of where the culmination and where his practice and community, the Beyond Burnout Collective, started to come together, where he has over 180 members. He provides practical tools for people feeling drained, stressed, or stuck, focusing on foundational pillars of sleep optimization, stress management, and sustainable lifestyle change. His approach alone bridges academic research with real-world application, making complex health behavior science accessible and actionable. So without further ado, I'm really excited to bring you all my guest, Mr. Jacob Greer. Jacob, welcome to the NBT movement. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to get into it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the whole core premise of this episode, right? The title is essentially Beyond Burnout, where we talk about the science, the stress, and really sustainable recovery practices. And this is more or less a collaborative conversation where we're diving down the science. But again, like I alluded to earlier, is we're making the science practical so people can have actionable steps after this episode, like ASAP, to integrate within their own life practice. So really the core question we're looking to answer here is when people say, I'm doing everything I think I should be doing, but I still feel exhausted and burnout, what am I missing? If you could give me sort of like a key summary, what would be your answer to that question?
Yeah, I think a lot of people misunderstand what real burnout is. I think a lot of people would say that they're just tired and they just maybe need a little bit more rest, when really, I think the core of burnout, at least the people that I deal with, are people that have their nervous systems are completely out of whack. Their natural body rhythms are not aligned the way that they're supposed to be. There's so many different things going on the inside that they're unaware of, they don't know how to take care of, and kind of get back aligned. And so those things are keeping them from being as productive as they want, from reaching their goals, from feeling like they can get the most out of life. And my approach is taking practical tools like you've been mentioning and giving easy, actionable steps every step of the way. That way people actually know what they're doing, and they have a roadmap to get them from A to B. So a lot of the things that we'll probably talk about today are going to be grounded in science, like you mentioned, but they're also very, very easily implemented and actionable.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people are looking for is, especially now in this day and age, you can just get like analysis paralysis, information overload with what you see online. Like one person saying one thing, the other person saying a completely different thing, but they're both in alignment and they both seem like quote unquote gurus, right? And that's kind of the challenge is like, where do you look to when all is kind of like pointing in the opposite direction? That's kind of the challenge there, right? So yeah, and that's kind of it. Is this conversation is essentially, the hook here is how many of you have ever felt like you're running on empty? Like no matter how much coffee you drink or how many hours you sleep, you just don't seem to get that energy back. And that's kind of what we're essentially answering here. So I want to start off this conversation really with just like one simple question is, and just kind of get listeners to know you a bit more. Would you mind talking about your story and like, what did burnout actually look like? Because you had a personal experience with this as well. So what did that look like for you? As I'm sure there's going to be a lot of listeners who resonate with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you kind of hit on it a little bit already, but my PhD is in health behaviors and wellness education. And so my entire academic background is in health and wellness. A lot of the things that I help people with now, and going into my doctorate, I thought I had it all figured out. I was doing all the right things, and I I overloaded myself. I thought I could handle everything that I was achieving or trying to achieve, and everything that I was putting on my plate ended up swamping me. I mean, it drowned me quick, and it wasn't actually until I guess it was the summer after my first year in my doctorate that my advisor, my department chair, sat me down and was like, "Hey, I don't think you're okay. You know, you have bags under your eyes. You
Mm.
seem miserable. Like you're here, but you're not here.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we're talking and having conversations, there's no life in your eyes anymore.
Mm.
Are you okay?" Is what she was really getting to the, and I didn't really have an answer. I was like, I don't know what's going on. I feel like I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. My stress is through the roof. I've never experienced this. And I have a strong background in being physically active. You know, I did bodybuilding and done Spartan races. I've worked out for most of my adult life, and
Uh-huh.
I had no desire to work out anymore. I hated the thought of being active, and I was struggling in my relationship. I had just started dating, who is now my fiance. We had just started dating, and I was having a lot of issues there because I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't taking care of myself,
Oh.
and I just kind of hit rock bottom, man. And I didn't realize it until she had said it, and that for me was a huge wake up call. And I'm thankful for her because she actually gave me a space to start to recover a little bit.
Mm.
She was like, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit less of a teaching load. So I wasn't teaching as many classes. I was still teaching, still full time in my
Wow.
doctorate,
Yeah.
still working outside of that as well, just to kind of pay bills. But it wasn't as much, and so it allowed me a little bit of space to recover. And
Mm.
so that space led to me just investigating a lot of these things, trying to find more practical ways. So obviously, I had the theoretical, the scientific background and all
Right.
this stuff, but it wasn't clearly helping me in my real life.
Yeah,
And
you
so I
kind of
wanted to find the ways. Yeah, yeah. And so I wanted to find the ways to take what I knew and really apply it. And it was a lot of trial and error,
yeah.
which a lot of people I'm sure have struggled with. And like you were saying, there's so many gurus out there, like, meditation is the way, or,
Right.
keto diet, or whatever
Right.
it is. There's so many different things. And my purpose, my vision for my community and the people that I help is to take all of that noise and
Mm.
kind of condense it all into one specific roadmap. These are the things that help me and will tend to help most people because they are backed by science, my own experience, the people that I'm working with. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just a little bit of my story and kind of the reason that I'm even in the space that I am.
Wow. Yeah. And I would imagine even like getting into a doctorate program, yeah, you get interviewed. So the director knows you pretty well from the beginning. And she addressed that and said, "Hey, like you don't look like that entry-level doctorate student that was eager beaver coming into the program anymore." And that was sort of, would you say that was kind of the pivot point for you? Like it was a collaborative effort to kind of spark that change?
Yeah, definitely. It was, I mean, I knew things were wrong
Yeah.
internally. And we might talk a little bit about this later, but I also had OCD. Didn't know I ever had that. I had it my whole life, and I just didn't know how to name it.
Yeah.
So that was starting to flare up. And even, my girlfriend was like, "Hey, like, you just don't seem happy," and
Yeah.
when my boss was finally like, "Hey, I don't think you're okay,"
Mm.
that was the moment that I was like, all right, this is serious. Like people are starting to notice that I'm not all right.
Oh.
It's not just internal anymore,
Yeah.
A lot of people at my level, at a doctorate level, or people that are high achievers, it's you feel a bit of shame. You don't want to admit that you're struggling, that you took on too much and you can't handle it.
Yeah.
You convince yourself that that's normal, that everybody's struggling, that everybody's just pushing through, and that's actually not the case.
Yeah.
And if it is the case, that's not good. You don't want to be in that place. You don't produce the greatest amount of work. You're not proud of the things that you're doing, and you're honestly struggling through every single thing you do. And I can confidently say on the other side that there's so much better out there once you figure out how to implement these simple tools, and you feel like, man, I'm so much more productive. I get more done in a quarter of the time, and I'm able to actually enjoy the other parts of my life and not feel drowned the entire day. So yeah,
Just balance is what it was. Something kind of
yeah,
sparked to my mind here is had your director not called you out, what do you think that journey would have looked like for you? Have you ever thought about that question?
Oh, not directly, but I have really thought about just what it would have looked like to keep pushing forward
Yeah.
without being able to take that step back. And I really don't think I would have made it, you
Wow.
know. And I'm thankful again for her because she has seen people in that same place. You
Mm.
know, she had been the chair of our department for, you know, decades. And so she really knows what it looks like when people are in that place. And
Wow.
so I think without her saying something, and she, you know, they warn you on the front end. It's like, this is a lot and you're going to have trouble, but we're here for you. Like
Yeah.
you can get through it. But they, you know,
You don't know what it
so
means until you're in it, right? It's kind of
yeah,
like all hearsay until you actually experience it. Wow.
yeah,
Wow. That's powerful to have
yeah,
a mentor like that. You know, it was like sort of divine timing. You know, it wouldn't have happened otherwise. That's exactly why it happened that way. So
yeah.
really powerful stuff, man. That's really cool. So how did that whole, I know you mentioned the whole OCD experience. How did that interact and compound with the burnout? Like what were like the key indicators for you?
Yeah, so it definitely compounded the burnout.
Mm,
I know a lot of people nowadays in our culture tend to struggle with anxiety and stress, and
mm,
understandably so with the way the world is kind of going and the state of our economy and politics and everything else. Like you have a reason to kind of be stressed and prices of everything, and
yeah.
you know that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
But OCD is another level of anxiety and stress. It
Mm,
it takes your worst fears and it weaponizes it against you essentially. And like you think that you've experienced stress and worry until you've had OCD, and it's just something that it's so hard to explain. Your mind is just constantly attacking you, and when you don't understand why, it feels hopeless at times.
mm,
You feel like, am I ever going to be able to not have these thoughts? Am I going to be able to live a normal life again? And that's a lot of the things that I was going through, man. It was months of suffering with just this anxiety, these thoughts that kept me up at night. I couldn't fall asleep. It was the first thing I thought about when I woke up,
wow.
which I know can be relatable for a lot of people in different ways. And so that was my existence for, you know, 6 to 8 months until it finally clicked. I heard somebody say something about it, and so I looked more into it, met with a therapist, and sure enough, I had OCD. And I think putting a name on it
Mm,
gave me a little bit of peace. It gave me some hope even
yeah.
to kind of keep pushing forward because there were times I was just like, I don't know what to do anymore. You know, I was
Wow.
having panic attacks at work. Um, it was spiraling out of control very quickly.
Mm,
And luckily, by the grace of God, you know, I'm a Christian, and I would pray every day about it because it was just
mm,
such a big obstacle in my life, and I had no idea how to overcome it.
wow.
And so among all of the other things that were causing my burnout, you know, sleep and everything else, like this was attacking my mind and my mental health. And so a lot of the tools that we talk about in my community and in
Mhm.
my program are very physical, you know, taking care of your physical health. But we also do talk about mental health because it's something that I've experienced personally, how difficult it can be when you don't have control of your thoughts,
Mm,
when your own mind is causing misery every single day,
yeah.
and it really is on your head, you know. Obviously there can be things that cause you stress and, you know, can worry you. That's not what I'm saying at all, but most of the time it was irrational thinking. It was intrusive thoughts. It was just
Mm,
worrying about the future that doesn't exist. It was all in my head. And so learning how to kind of work through that stuff was a huge help in the burnout recovery for me. And so taking that, adding it with a lot of the physical tools and implementations,
mm.
it kind of gave me the whole recovery picture there.
Wow, it kind of like came full circle for you. And I think we've talked about this before as well. Is like the most powerful part is like, yeah, sure, you have the degree, you understand the theory, but to have the anecdotal experience and to have to actually have gone through that just puts so much more context that, you know, I think those are really where the clinical wizards come in, is because they've lived it and they can relate to, you know, people that are going through this. And I'm sure there's even a story behind your director, whether it's just having decades of experience or having gone through it yourself or having understand the research from a different perspective. There's just so much power in all of that. So, I think that you're onto something here, and there's going to be a lot of success to come. But diving into sort of like the next piece here, and something that I think a lot of people are going to relate to is the science. And again, we're going to make it more practical here, in understanding the why, which helps people take the like what to do more seriously. It's like you were saying, once you're able to put a title on something, you can at least start the path of understanding is the idea here. Whereas it's like, you're sailing without a compass without it, is sort of the idea here. But a lot of listeners, I'm sure they're hearing this conversation, and there's some questions that might come up and that I want to sort of like sift through. Like one might be is, how would someone know they're actually like burned out versus if they're just tired? Is there a difference at all to that, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. There are obviously a lot of physical signs, but a lot of mental ones as well. Obviously, you're going to feel fatigued. A lot of people will, like we mentioned, your internal systems are going to be out of rhythm. So let's say you're drained all day, but you feel all your energy at night when you're trying to go to sleep, when you should be going to sleep. That could be a big one. Or waking up in the middle of the night, like too early before you're supposed to wake up, not being able to fall back asleep. That's another one. Emotional exhaustion is a big one, where you just feel kind of apathetic. You struggle to be motivated, and you have a hard time with empathy towards other people. You're very irritable, sort of cynical as far as your outlook on the world. Just very melancholy is a great word for it. You just feel kind of depressed, which depression is a whole other topic, but that sense of, you just struggle with hope and motivation to get up every day.
Yeah.
And that obviously, that's a spectrum. People are going to be different places with that. But those are two of the big ones. Obviously, struggling with energy throughout the day, just kind of feeling like you're dragging. You just don't have any energy to get your tasks done. If you have brain fog, if you have trouble focusing on things, if you start a thought and you feel like it just kind of dissipates and disappears. You don't know where your mind's going. You have a hard time focusing on the tasks that you have at hand. It takes you a lot longer to do things. The list goes on, man. There's a ton of things that can kind of be some signs and symptoms there, but that's a lot of the big ones that people tend to struggle with.
It sounds like there's sort of overlap with depression as well. Or would you say that's sort of like another bag of worms, can of worms, right?
Yeah. I think, our health as a whole is holistic, in my opinion, and in the research I've done. So everything kind of ties together, and I would say that it can definitely be a factor in it. There are certain things that depression has to be treated specifically. Same with OCD. OCD has a very specific treatment. So it can definitely be part of somebody's path. Everybody's kind of different. They'll have different things that are affecting them. Somebody might be overweight. If somebody's severely overweight, that could be causing them to have a lot more physical fatigue and different health problems versus somebody that might have depression or anxiety syndrome or anything like that.
That makes sense. Can you recover from burnout without taking time off from work? Like what would you say is like a sort of like a general strategy for recovering from burnout? Like what would be a starting point?
Yeah. Obviously, if we could take off work and separate ourselves from our families and our responsibilities every day, that's going to be a fast track to recovery. But that's just not practical, and it's not reasonable to expect anything like that.
Right.
If you can have access to something like that, that'd be awesome. But for most people, it's not attainable. And one thing I would like to say is that, kind of like my story with OCD, having a little bit of hope can be transformational in itself. So I think understanding that it is possible to recover from burnout without having to give up your job, without giving up the things that you love. And a lot of it comes down to very simple, small steps every day. And so it's not going to be, for most people, it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's not going to happen within a couple weeks. It does take a little bit of time, but as you build consistency with these things, small little wins every day, you will start to build that momentum. And it's the same with losing weight. You know, you don't look in the mirror after a week and see that you've lost 40 pounds, but over 4 months, you can look back and be like, I feel like a totally different person. These things really do work, as long as I can be consistent with them. And so, yeah, I think it's definitely recoverable. I help people every day to improve, to make small wins and see the results in their own life. And so I'm not going to promise 100% because a lot of it does come down to personal accountability and whether you can actually stick to the plan, do the things that you need to do, which is also hard when you're already burning out, which is why I make things so simple and actionable.
Yeah, no, that's great. So taking it one layer deeper here and actually going into the science, what would you say is actually happening on a physiological level when we're chronically stressed? Like, how does that sort of cascade and, you know, sort of turn into burnout?
Yeah, so I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I do want to kind of give that scientific background, obviously. So within our body, we have multiple different nervous systems. You know, you have your central nervous, your peripheral, but one that people don't tend to know as well is the autonomic nervous system. So you have two branches of that autonomic nervous system. You have your sympathetic, which is your fight or flight. You know, that's the one that makes you perform. It makes you get up and take action. It's the thing that happens when your heart starts racing and your mouth waters, or actually your mouth gets dry, the opposite. Your vision narrows, you know, you just get ready to take action.
Right.
That's your sympathetic, that's your fight or flight, that's your stress response. It's obviously called different things, but that is your stress response. On the opposite end, the foil of that system is the parasympathetic. And so that is your rest and digest, as a lot of people call it. That is the one that takes over when it's time to relax, unwind, recover, go to sleep, digest your food, repair your body, all that stuff. So they're total opposites, which is ironic that a lot of them use the same connections within the body, the neurons and the different synapses and that kind of thing, but they are very different in how they make your body react to different things. So the sympathetic is kind of the main character here, where that is what is activated when you're stressed. And so burnout can start with just simple being stressed. And it's something that spirals over time. And so once your stress system is activated, we'll probably talk a little bit more about cortisol and that kind of thing later, as far as energy goes, but cortisol will spike. But what will happen for people that are burnt out is that their cortisol is just mostly maxed out. It's just one level at all times. It never, comes up and down. Instead, it's just constantly maxed out.
And cortisol is your stress hormone, right?
It's one of the stress hormones. Yeah, okay. It is. So typically the stress hormones are referred to as, your adrenaline, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. But cortisol, just to kind of talk about it while we're on the topic, cortisol, I like to think of it kind of like a taxi driver, a taxi cab, where the passengers are glucose, it's energy, and cortisol is just transporting that energy to different parts of the body. And so when your body is in a stress mode, when you activate that sympathetic system, what happens is your body needs energy to take action, right? Yeah. So it needs that glucose for your muscles to perform, to attack or handle whatever situation that you're presented. And so cortisol, as a result, is going to be higher because your body is transporting more energy, right? So that is why cortisol is seen as the bad stress hormone, because it's a result of that activation of that sympathetic system. So is it necessarily bad? I would say no, because it has a lot of good benefits. There's a lot of good ways to look at cortisol and how to use it, leverage it for good. So I try to kind of challenge that. Dr. Andrew Huberman recently came out with an episode talking about all this stuff, maybe a couple months ago. And it's nice that people are starting to kind of get the idea that cortisol isn't necessarily bad. It's just a sign that something is wrong within your body, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like you're calling Uber way too much. Your body's calling Uber way too much, and it's transport. And that's kind of the whole, I sort of kind of had this realization as you were just speaking, is like, if cortisol is a taxi cab driver, driving the energy all around, no wonder why you're zapped out, because you're always sympathetic. So now your body's always demanding to move the energy, and you only have so much energy, and even in reserves, before you're just fully depleted. So you've exhausted all your energy and you're basically running on fumes, like just basically like vital life at this point is what your body's trying to sustain itself by. And it's not even able to do really much more than that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I definitely tend to use a lot of car metaphors. So as we talk, if I use cars in imagery, I'm just going to give that up on the front end.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's absolutely, like, that's a great way to think about it. Like, you have run out of gasoline and you're just running on fumes. Like, all the energy is spent. And if your cortisol, talking about sleep and stuff.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to have this trajectory where your cortisol is actually highest in the morning and it will slowly taper off throughout the day, which would make sense, right? Because you want to start the day with as much energy as possible, kind of eat away at it as the day goes, and then by the time you go to sleep, you shouldn't really need energy, right? Your body's going to start to fall asleep, and then even in the first couple stages of sleep, the first few cycles that you go through, your body isn't using hardly any energy to digest food or anything like that, and so your metabolism is going to be super low. But then as the night goes and you're sleeping, your body's going to start to wake up. It's called the cortisol activation response, I think, something like that, the CAR, your cortisol activation response. And so at a certain point in the middle of the night, it's going to start to come back up. And so that's when you start having longer REM sleep, your body's using more energy, your metabolism starts to wake up, and that's what actually causes you to wake up in the morning. And so then you wake up, you start building more energy, spiking that cortisol, and then it goes back down. So yeah, it's just, if you have a normal cortisol response within your body, you're going to have a lot of energy at the beginning of the day, and it's going to kind of taper throughout the day. But like you're saying, if you're constantly burned out and you're stressed, you're on a 10 all day.
Yeah.
You have no time to recover. Your systems are just always maxed out. And so obviously you're going to feel like garbage.
Does this have any tie into what you were saying earlier about when people that are burned out or stressed are always kind of sympathetic, and how they have a hard time going to sleep or they wake up in the middle of the night? Is there any relation to what we're speaking about now to that specifically, or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's almost the cause of it. Obviously there's a lot of cause and effect, different, it's multifactorial, but one of the biggest factors in how you sleep at night is part of this system, right? You have, I'm trying to think how much detail I want to go in here.
Go down the rabbit hole, bro. We can break it down.
Yeah. So like I was just saying, you have this daily cycle with your cortisol. But you also have another internal system, which most people have heard this. Maybe they haven't heard much about cortisol other than the negative side.
Right.
But you have what's called a circadian rhythm within your body. So hopefully some of our listeners have heard of that. If you haven't heard of it, it's essentially just this 24-hour internal clock within your body.
Yeah.
The root word circa just means about, and then dia, circadia, it just means day. So about a day, about 24 hours is what that word means. So your circadian rhythm is just this 24-hour clock that your body runs on.
Yes.
And that is what controls a lot of your body's hormones, a lot of the natural systems, when you wake up, when you get sleepy, how your body digests food, all of this stuff. It controls so much of our body. And the funny thing is that there's one small piece in your brain. Do you know what I'm talking about, Sheldon? Have you heard of this?
The piece in the hippocampus or your amygdala?
It's no, it's close. It's called your suprachiasmatic nuclei.
Okay.
Yeah, most people have not heard of this,
Yeah.
but it's this small part of your brain. It's actually connected to your eyeballs in some very intricate ways. But this suprachiasmatic nuclei is the conductor of your circadian rhythm. It is
Oh.
what controls when this clock starts and when when it activates certain things. And so ideally we have a consistent clock every single day, and that gives our that SCN. I'll just call it the SCN, so I don't have to say it every
Right.
time. That gives the SCN an easy job for the day when you're consistent.
Yeah.
But when you're waking up at different times every day, when you're going to sleep at different times, or if you're up in the middle of the night, or if you're having a lot of bright light at night,
Yeah.
it's throwing that thing completely off. It's constantly trying to adjust. Our body likes homeostasis. It likes
Regulation.
balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, regulation. And so the more that we throw it off, the harder it's fighting to kind of get it back to normal. And so one of the biggest things, and this is what I talk about as far as actionable tools, waking up at a certain time of day every single day will help. It's called entrainment. It'll entrain that circadian rhythm to be consistent, and it doesn't have to fluctuate as much and fight that fluctuation. And so, yeah, so you have that internal 24-hour clock, but you also have your your cortisol response, and it's connected to another system that's called your HPA axis. Have you heard of this?
HPA. No.
So your HPA axis, so at I think you mentioned it earlier, the hypothalamus, hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal axis.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah. So this HPA axis, it controls your stress response, but it is also connected to that suprachiasmatic nuclei. And I feel like I'm getting so far in the weeds here, I'm probably losing some people.
No, you're fine.
But yeah, this HPA axis. So your hypothalamus is also like a conductor, and so
okay.
We're talking now about the endocrine system, your hormones.
Mm-hmm.
So your hypothalamus sends a signal to your pituitary, your anterior pituitary, and then it sends hormones to your adrenals. So your adrenals, also known as your kidneys, they hold a lot of those stress hormones, those corticosteroids, those stress hormones that we talked about earlier. So all of it is connected, right? Hopefully that's the idea I want to give here, is that
they're
these
all
different
feedback
systems,
loops to one another.
they're all exactly. That's the perfect way to describe it. Yeah, they're all negative feedback loops.
Yeah.
So the idea of a negative feedback loop is that once something is at its maximum, it will stop sending whatever is causing that. So if you're sending a signal that, hey, we're stressed, we need more energy, your body's going to send that cortisol. It's going to send the energy that your body needs until it's resolved. But what's happening with people that are burnt out and they're stressed, they're never getting that signal to turn it off, right? It just keeps going. It keeps producing cortisol, and that's what happens. That's when you have that chronic elevated cortisol and all these other things, and so that's when you start running into issues. So what you want?
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
Now, I was just going to say that what you want to do is get that back into normal and start having the highs and lows, which is actually good. That you don't want any of these to be constantly at a maximum, to be constantly maxed out. You do want that fluctuation every single day. That's what's normal.
Yeah.
So,
and something that kind of just came to my mind here was, it seems like it's almost like a resource allocation. And with this, you only have so much of it. So would you say that it's the switch not turning off, or it's resources getting depleted and there not being any more? Like you're reaching into the bank and there's nothing coming out anymore, but the switch is still open. So what does the body do at that point?
yeah, I mean, I think you kind of just answered it. It really is both, where you're turning that signal on, like you're unable to switch over to that parasympathetic, that rest and digest. So it's constantly sending the signal that I am in danger. I need resources. I need energy. Like, send me more energy.
Right.
But when you are out of energy, what is it going to send you? And that's when you start running into problems. So yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So these are essentially like symptoms like brain fog, fatigue. I mean, burnout is just basically like a physical manifestation of these like hormonal changes, where now you're essentially in a hormonal debt. and your body has no idea, no way to figure it out other than just like, well, we're just gonna run autopilot and see how far we can get. And
Yeah.
even on like a more like physical state, I mean, this sort of depletion and sort of debt can trigger incidences like, soft tissue injury, which is something I specialize in. So when I see people coming to me and they've been dealing with chronic low back pain, I have a lot of conversations with them and say, hey, one of my other key facets or one of my pillars here is breath, so I say, hey, what kind of breath work? Oh, I've never done breath. I breathe all day. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, you breathe, but do you really?
Right.
And then, I mean, it all ties into the nervous system, right? And that's all we're trying to do here is we're just trying to help you regulate your nervous system a little better, get in touch with your body and have that awareness to like when the check engine lights come on, my car reference, right?
Yeah.
That you pay attention to it, hopefully, and, figure out an optimal way to resolve that before it becomes into a sort of catastrophic event, So that's kind of the idea here. Man, that was a lot of powerful stuff. And I don't think we went too far into the rabbit hole in the hormones. I enjoyed it. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could be long-winded. I can get into the details, and I can sometimes when I talk to people in person, I just watch them like glaze over because they have no clue what I'm talking about. But hopefully, somebody out there can appreciate the science and everything. But that's the stuff I love, and I can talk about it all day.
Love it. I love it. All right, so what are some myths that you found specific to burnout? Are there any like specific top ones that come to your mind? You're like, oh yeah, this is something that a lot of people or even myself thought at one point, and it's just totally misconstrued. And what's actually the case is, why or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, and I think we did kind of hit on it a little bit earlier. Like, I think people misunderstand that burnout is just tiredness.
Yeah.
There is such thing as just like pushing yourself and being exhausted,
Right.
but being able to get a good night's sleep and recover and keep doing it. But burnout, like we've been talking about, it's a very severe internal dysregulation. So the systems in your body are completely out of whack. Your body's, constantly trying to fight a fight that isn't, really there. It just feels like it is. It's convinced that there's something that it needs to take care of, and it just won't relax. So that's a big one. It's just thinking that, oh, I just need a little bit of rest, which you do, but there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more realignment, re-entrainment that needs to take place, some very internal work that has to happen. There's also certain mental skills and behaviors that you have to learn as well to prevent it from happening again. Because if you got here in the first place, you're likely to do it again.
Yeah.
Without the right tools in place. So that's a big one. And then there was another one that we kind of hit on earlier. What was it? I just think people think that they just need to push through.
Yeah.
That if I just keep going,
eventually it'll
and
be
keep
done.
doing what I'm doing, I'll get to the other side,
Right.
and I'll be okay. I'll be able to relax. And being in that place before, that's just not true. Like, you're more than likely, you're just going to keep adding, and it's just going to get worse and worse. And so avoiding it and pushing it down and not admitting it is not going to help anything, man. The best thing to do is admit that it's happening, acceptance. You talk about breath work, and I'm sure a little bit of meditation and that kind of stuff. One of the biggest ways to relieve stress and start healing is acceptance, is just letting it happen and realizing that it's already here.
Yeah.
That I am in this state. I don't need to fight and avoid it. I don't need to push it down, but accept that it's here and then take the next step forward.
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing is just being okay with the shame, which nobody's going to shame you,
Yeah.
Even with me, it's just like people were worried, most people are going to be worried about you. It's just like, hey, are you okay? And it's a mental thing. Your pride takes over. You want to say like, oh, this is, I'm stronger than this. I can handle it. And it's just,
you get to your
a lot of times
breaking
you
point.
just can't.
Everybody gets to their breaking point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a big one, is just thinking like, I can't tell anybody. Like I'm alone in this is another one. It's just feeling like I have to be the only one, that's struggling this hard. Like everybody else is clearly making it through. So this is just me. And I think that's a lie as well.
So I know we just kind of also talked a little bit about the hormone piece. If we have, if someone's kind of in question on whether their hormones are regulated, could they just go to their general doctor and say, hey, I was listening to this podcast and some dude said my hormones are jacked up, so I wanted to get them checked out? What would be the strategy here if they're really concerned? I'm sure there's one piece where, yeah, gen med doctors are going to have one scope, one lens that they look through. Will probably refer you to an endocrinologist to get further analysis. And if you're at that point, there's probably a cascade of other things that are going on as well. But generally speaking, what would you say for someone who's interested in getting their blood work and really wants to take a look at that?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely not be against it. I think there's a lot of wisdom in getting those answers.
Right.
That's very tangible data that you can get and say, oh, this thing is happening to me. So
Yeah.
I would definitely not say I'm against it by any means. What I would say though, and this is just a personal belief, I am about prevention, and taking action in your own hands first,
Yes.
and then using medicine as a last resort.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna demonize medicine or big pharma or anything like that. Which that again, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a time and place for medicine, and
Yes.
I'm not saying that it's bad by any means. But what I am against is using it as a crutch.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to solve the root problem, right?
Yeah.
If you are doing the same behaviors, this one crutch is not going to be enough. You're just going to need another crutch and another crutch, and
there's no magic
before you know
pill.
it, you're taking 30 pills, just to alleviate all the symptoms of the first pill that you took. You know? So it's
No
just
kidding.
it's a rabbit hole, and what the sad part is, you probably could have fixed it. I'm not going to say always, but most of the time you could have fixed it with some simple behavior change, and you would have avoided that mess entirely, And so I think trying specific behaviors first, and that's why, again, I have my community, my program, my coaching, is because I want to help people take those steps first. And if we decide like, hey, something really is amiss here, like something is wrong, I think you might need to be checked out for this or that, then you take that step. But until you start taking accountability for your own actions and your behaviors, I don't think getting medical treatment is the first step, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you where the Western medicine model, it's good for certain things, but it's very reactive. Whereas we can take a lot more of a proactive approach. There's more of a holistic lens. You can look at sort of all the puzzle pieces on your own before, and become as informed as you can as a consumer before you subscribe to a certain methodology or practice, and, try things out before either you got to go under the knife, be prescribed a certain medication or whatever the case might be. Of course, this is case by case, right? But definitely information is out there, especially in this day and age, is available. So no, that's great. Let's segue into our next topic here, which is going to be sleep. And I know it sounds super basic. It's like, yes, I want 6 to 8 hours of sleep. I get it. Sure. But a lot of people underestimate just how foundational this is. So I want to hear a little bit more about how you break this down for us and what's actually happening when we sleep and why it matters so much for recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, and so I'm going to try to keep it succinct, but give some good details here.
Yeah.
I think rest, in our Western culture, rest is it's just not seen as important. I think I wouldn't say demonized, but it's definitely not a priority. We are all about the grind, and I need to make more money. I need to do more things, and all this stuff. It's just all about production. Like, how much am I doing? And as I've grown in my own personal faith as a Christian, just understanding how I relate to God and everything, I realized that there's so much in the scriptures about the importance of rest. And I think that is evident in when our body needs it, right? So the more you lean into science, the more you realize that, man, sleep is foundational. Like, you cannot perform, you cannot excel if you are not getting proper rest. Like, eventually it will catch up to you and you will hit a breaking point. Like, the people that are doing the absolute most in the world right now are most likely getting at least some good rest.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise they're going to be hitting a wall very soon. So it is foundational, and I cannot overstate that enough. Like, sleep is the crux of everything. It's the first step in my program. It's the very first thing that we fix, because everything else is going to be built on sinking sand, right? If you don't have solid sleep, you're not getting the proper recovery. You're not entraining that circadian rhythm. All of this stuff is kind of useless, right? I like to talk about, again, here's another car metaphor, but a lot of people try to, like I was just saying, they try to do more, right? They're trying to get the next job, or go make more money, or, add more relationships. I mean, the list goes on. They're trying to do all this extra stuff. And so I kind of think about it like somebody has a sports car, like a Ferrari or a Aston Martin or whatever. And they're adding on new wheels, they're adding the spoiler, they're, a new cooling system, they put a turbo on it, like all this stuff to make it go faster. They're trying to do more, they're trying to win the next race, right?
Right.
But the problem is they're doing all this stuff to be more productive or win the race, but the engine's broken. They haven't changed the oil, like,
Not doing the basics.
The what are they called? The spark plugs are misfiring, right?
Yeah.
All this stuff in the engine that makes the car actually run in the first place is all out of whack. And so it's futile. You're adding all this extra stuff to make the car go faster, but you're not taking care of the engine, the one thing that actually makes it go. And I like to relate that to our internal system, all the stuff that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Like, if you are not taking care of your internal systems with sleep as the foundation, everything else is almost pointless. It's just a kind of a waste of time. And so all that to say that sleep is vital. It is the one thing, because it helps with, recovery. It helps clear out all the stuff that makes you have that mental fog. It wipes all that out. It helps you. I think I already talked about recovery, but I mean, the list goes on. It's one of those things that, like, is so overlooked, but it's foundational.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I talked about. I used to work in safety and ergonomics, and I worked in it was a very laborious industry that I worked in. I was one of the health, safety, injury prevention guys. So I didn't work a full shift with these guys, but these guys are working 12 to 16 hours. And when I started taking over new hire training, I talked about nutrition, which is one key there. And the other piece was sleep. And I said, what a lot of science says is you want to be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And I say, and then people kind of laugh and chuckle. I'm like, I know in this setting, it's probably not realistic, but if you can manage 6 hours, like at min, and then when you're on your off days, shoot for 6 to 8, that's going to keep you regulated. That's going to be best for you. Energy drinks ain't going to do dick for you. If you're just trying to run on fumes day after day, it's not ideal. And in this setting, you're bound for an injury. You're going to come see me in my office and say my shoulder's pulled or something like that, because now you've been in a deficit for so long and you finally reached a breaking point. Like, let's not get there. Sleep is super ideal. And I, especially for the new hires, I even talked about like memory consolidation. I'm like, hey, like, you're in this new job setting here and you're trying to learn a new task. You need to make sure you're tapping that REM sleep, because that's when your brain's going into memory consolidation mode. And I explain like file cabinet. I'm like, your brain's just one big file cabinet, and you just put in a bunch of new files in this week here when you're a new hire learning this new job. Now your brain's got to organize that shit. So you need to make sure you're getting some sleep so your file cabinet can be organized the next day, so you remember how to do things. Otherwise, you're going to be brain fog. You're not going to know your head from your butt, and you're going to be, walking. People are going to be running circles around you. So no, I totally agree with you. There's so much importance to getting good quality rest. It's a balance. It's the yin and yang, and it's just not sexy. It's the sleep when you're dead culture. And it's just like, nah, dude, you need to grow past that. That's not what it's about at all,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you kind of reminded me as you were talking, I did an inductive analysis study last year with college students, and I was interviewing a lot of them, and I was just kind of getting their perceptions on sleep, right? A lot of this stuff that we've just been talking about, like sleeps for the dead. You would be surprised at how many of them said that sleep was the last priority on their list, right? It was the first thing to go. They saw it as like, I have other better things to be doing. Like, there's so much more I need to be doing. And
these are college athletes.
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
there's so much data out there showing how poor college students are sleeping. I mean, it's one of the worst populations of
Mm,
all people groups, really, is college students because they're so stressed with different homework assignments and keeping a social life and
mm-hmm.
working to pay tuition and all this stuff, and they're
Yeah.
just not sleeping. But the sad part about it, you were saying the memory consolidation, our learning processes take place when we're asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm reading research articles about how college students' academic performance is going through the floor. I mean, it's just awful.
Yeah.
Like these people are not sleeping. They're being told like sleep's not that important. You just need to keep grinding.
Yeah.
And they're, yeah, they either burn out and they drop out or they just
Yeah.
kind of crawl across the finish line. And then they're right into the workforce doing the same thing. And
Yeah.
it's just this whole message that sleep is not as important as it is, man. It's just kind of sad.
It's like a rude induction into adulthood, into like early adulthood. And that's not the way it should be. I mean, you literally die if you don't sleep.
Yeah.
Like I remember hearing about that. Like there was like this like a gamer that was streaming for like, I don't know, a week and then they just died just straight up. I'm like, whoa, like that was a while ago. I don't know if it was a week, but it was a certain amount of time. They just stayed up and I'm like, holy crap, dude. Even Navy SEALs, like when they do Hell Week, they're still getting micro naps, dude. Like, and I was in the Navy myself, and I was able to experience that when I was in San Diego. I saw them training, doing all the things, man, and they get put through the ringer. But even, every few hours, they get a little cat nap of 10 to 15 minutes, and then they got M16s going off the next minute, and then they're up and running on the beach again. But yeah, it's crazy just to think about that. There's not a priority on this. I feel like there's becoming more of an awareness with this sort of topic, though, like with, books like Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker, like a lot of good research there. Dr. Andrew Huberman, he's bringing a lot of these sorts of things to sort of like the surface. And with all the research being put into it, it's like, hey, like we need to pay attention to this because there's clearly a gap between where we are as a society and how we need to be treating humanity, as a whole. That's kind of the piece there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some great research by them. I love Dr. Matt Walker and Dr. Huberman as well. They are foundational in my kind of understanding of sleep. They were actually part of what piqued my interest a little bit at first, and then I just kept diving deeper and deeper. And so, like, the stuff that they're talking about is so great, and I'm thankful for people like them that have such a big platform to put that information out there, like you said.
Yeah. This is a great conversation here. So what would be some things for listeners? Like if they had some questions, like the first one might be, hey, I get 8 hours of sleep, but I'm still exhausted. Is their body signaling something to them? Like, does that mean they're burned out, or what would you say is going on at that point in your mind?
Yeah, I definitely think it could signal some burnout.
Mhm.
The issue there might be you might be getting the duration, and so if you read kind of some of this research on sleep, there's different terms. So you have like sleep duration, sleep quality, sleep timing. Like there's different terms and stuff, and so it's not just one thing, right? So you might have the duration, but you're not getting the quality, the depth of sleep.
Mm.
And so different things can affect sleep quality or sleep depth.
Mhm.
Things like having caffeine late at night can kind of circumvent sleep depth.
Mhm.
So that's one thing that I see.
Yeah. I mean,
What
that's a big
else?
one because caffeine in itself has a 10 to 12-hour half-life. So if you're drinking
Right.
it before you go to sleep, like you're basically going to sleep on a full caffeine reserve, you know?
Yeah.
That's a big piece right there.
I think having large meals before bed can be a big one.
Yeah.
And obviously all of the energy cortisol talk that we mentioned earlier, like that
Yeah.
can be huge, and your body's just not fully relaxing and
Yeah.
recovering while you might be laying down for 8 hours, but you're not
Yeah.
really getting that rest.
I like to say too, like when you eat a big meal before you go to sleep, like your body's allocating resources and energy to digest that food. So it's not getting true full rest. Like I follow this guy, Brian Johnson. He's like that, the anti-death guy, vampire looking dude. But
Yeah.
yeah, he had some solid research he was talking about. He said, yeah, like I don't eat 4 hours before I go to sleep. So my last meal is at 5 PM, if I'm trying to go to sleep before like at like 9 to 10, and 10 is like night owl status for him. So that's a big piece there too, man. But yeah, that's the other piece of it is like resource allocation. So like if you're eating something, your body's got to digest it. It's not just going to go to sleep and say, okay, well, we're just sleeping. We're not digesting. What's your take on wearables? You know, and I have my own lens and perspective on wearables, you know, but, you know, specific to like sleep, like Whoop bands or Oura rings or monitoring HRV as an indicator to sleep quality. Like, what's your take on these types of devices?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think they definitely are beneficial. I think if you are somebody that is wanting to learn more about your health and kind of take some data in on that and see, you know, some of the things that are happening with your body,
Yeah.
I definitely think they could be helpful. I will say though, I think, and this is kind of my own personal experience as well.
Right.
People get married to the data,
Yeah.
and they're like, they let it dictate how they feel throughout the day. So
Yeah.
essentially, if your Whoop band or your Oura ring says you had a poor night of sleep last night, you should feel like crap today, then it's almost like that the law of suggestion. It's just like you're gonna convince yourself like, oh yeah, I really don't feel as great today.
Yeah.
You know,
placebo
whether
yourself.
it's true or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that can also be harmful. I think overall, I would say that, you know, I'm totally for them. I used to have a Whoop band.
Yeah.
Honestly, I stopped it because I was a college student. I couldn't afford $30 a month or whatever it was
Yeah.
on my budget.
Yeah.
So, you know, my fiance has an Oura ring. I think they're great. They give some good data. But I would say just to kind of, same with Apple Watches, you know, a lot of this stuff it's not 100% accurate. And I think
Right.
understanding that going into it, knowing like this is kind of giving me the big picture,
Mhm.
but it's not 100% accurate. Like it is not 100% accurately tracking my sleep, tracking my, you know, menstrual cycle or whatever it
Right.
is. Like there's going to be some give and take there as far as the data is concerned. So
Yeah.
I think just understanding that is crucial, but yeah, I think it could definitely be helpful
Yeah.
when used appropriately. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if like I was kind of thinking about this is like you have a sleep journal. So like when you wake up, like that's the first thing. You don't even go to the Whoop app if you're using a Whoop band, but you like have your sleep journal and then you basically like indicate like, oh, what was sleep quality? What was sleep duration? Like what would you rate that on a scale of like 0 to 10? You have a couple other like subjective questions you answer. And then you look at what the data says and you're like, okay, well, I was honest with myself here and this is what the data is saying. Like how true is that? But I think kind of going back to like specifically Whoop bands, I used to work in with military special forces, and in that setting, they all had like Whoop bands, and they would basically challenge each other to see how much of a strain score they could get. So like, oh, I got a 10. It's like, oh, you got a 10, you're a pussy, dude. I got like a 20, dude. So you have to use these devices in good faith. I think that's what I'm getting at here. This is the other piece of it. So.
Yeah, and like you said, you know, I do CrossFit just kind of recreationally. I love. There's a lot of reasons. It's just very short and succinct. It's like get in, do the workout, get out. It's high intensity. You just feel amazing. But yeah, there's so many people like I would meet and talk to, and they'd be like, "Yeah, it's telling me my score is low, so I'm taking it easy today." And I'm like, "Well, do you feel all right?" And they're like, "No, I mean, yeah, I feel like I want to work out, but it's telling me not to." I'm like, "Okay, you know, they're like, I get it, but it's I mean, you know, we have intuition for a reason, and so, you know, but you know, if somebody is struggling, you know, if they really are overtraining or something like that, I feel like, you know, for some serious athletes like that stuff can definitely be helpful, but I feel like the average person is not going to be overtraining. They're not going to be pushing themselves to the absolute limits physically, and so I think take it with a grain of salt, but they can be helpful.
I like to say it's sort of kind of like just creating awareness, right? More than anything.
Right.
Like whenever if I'm teaching someone how to count macros, I'm saying, okay, I know it's annoying, but I want you like weighing and measuring your food for at least the first 2 to 3 weeks, right? Just get an eye for what portion looks like, and then you can take it on your own, dude. You got it figured out.
Right.
It's the same idea there, you know, kind of goes the same hand in hand. Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. So let's dive a little bit into stress management here. I want to talk about this, and quite honestly, I think we're going to have to do another episode, my brother. We're having such a good conversation. I'm loving this. Yeah. We're getting a lot of content. We're talking about a lot of different topics as well too. But let's dive into it, man. Stress management and the nervous system. We've talked about why burnout happens, right? And why sleep is foundational. So let's get into what people actually can do on a daily basis to manage their stress response and start shifting their nervous system back towards balance. So let's start off with nervous system regulation techniques. What are some of your favorites, some of your go-tos for this sort of thing?
Yeah. I will say my approach to breathing techniques and that kind of stuff is going to be twofold. So I have different reasons for why I use both.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned breath work earlier, and I think that is one of the best ways to tap into the different nervous systems and kind of switch you between, because you can actually switch one or the other on or off depending on how you do it.
Through the breath.
That's how powerful. Yeah, just through the breath. And so I think, again, Dr. Huberman coming up again, but I heard about the physiological sigh from him, and I think him and his team at Stanford kind of put it on the map as far as their research. And I think we're going to have a link to a lot of these studies and stuff that we're talking about, and I think their study is in that document. But the physiological sigh is a big one because it almost instantaneously switches that sympathetic off and turns on the parasympathetic. It gets you from stressed and overwhelmed to relaxed and calm. And so that's a big one. I think box breathing is great for a lot of people. Just 4 seconds in, hold 4 seconds, 4 seconds out, hold 4 seconds, and just repeat that. Yeah. Those are two really good ones. I've also, my first semester as a college student, it was my first class. It was a psychology 101 or, whatever it was, first intro to psychology. And I remember she talked about a 3-7 breathing. So
prolonged exhales.
Long exhale because of how it affects the different neurons and stuff. And it slows that heart rate down. So 3 seconds in with a brief pause and then 7 seconds out. And so I did that all through college until I learned some of these other ones. I would just take that 3 seconds in, slow exhale. And you could feel your heart rate start to slow down as you do it. So I would say those are three super easy to do techniques.
Love that. What about something like building stress resiliency and stress avoidance versus stress avoidance? Or do you have any techniques that you would integrate with this?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a big one, and this is one of those things that help me with OCD more than anything. And it's mindfulness breathing. I'm not sure if you've heard of this. But yeah, mindfulness breathing. It's basically and there's different types. I mean, this is another one of those things in the literature that is argued. People say this one's better or that one's better. But one of the most common ones is just being able to sit with your thoughts. And so the way that you do it, this is how I learned it. I think I don't know if it's Buddhist or Hindu or, it has.
Where you're watching your breath is kind of the idea here. It's
Ram
Dass.
So the way, I think the name of it was Anapana or Anapastai, something like that. You could definitely look it up on YouTube, but essentially what you do is you sit, you dedicate 3 to 5 minutes at first. It's a lot harder than you think, just sit for 3 minutes, especially if you have stress and anxiety. But you just sit, you kind of close your eyes, and all you're doing is focusing on the breath as it enters and kind of touches your upper lip. All right. So either you feel it as it comes out your nose or as it touches your upper lip. For guys who have a mustache or whatever, you can kind of feel it. And so your focal point is on that part of your face. And what you're doing is just you sit, you relax, and all of your focus and attention is on that part of your face. But what will happen, and it happens to everybody, it's the whole point of this practice, is that your mind is going to start to wander. You're going to have thoughts they're going to come in. And if you're somebody that is stressed and anxious and worried all the time, thinking worst case scenario, all this, what you're going to do is attach to those thoughts. You're going to start chasing it down rabbit holes. You're going to think, what if I don't do this thing? And then that thing's going to happen. And then next thing you know, 3 minutes are up and you're like, wait, I was supposed to be focusing on my breath, and now I'm thinking about so-and-so passing away. It's just you go down these crazy trails. And so what you do, the whole point of it is like you mentioned earlier, awareness. So you build that awareness saying, oh, I'm thinking about this thing, right? I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. And then you say, I'm going to refocus. And so the skill here is refocusing back on your breath and on that part of your face. And you just do that every time you have a thought, you refocus.
Yeah.
You have another thought, you refocus. And it seems like, okay, how is that going to help anything? But it's building this muscle in your mind of refocusing instead of wandering, instead of like going off on these different rabbit trails and getting attached to these thoughts that are just thoughts. Because that's what, I mean, that's all they are at the end of the day. It's just a thought. I like to think of it, you know, when I'm doing it, I kind of picture it as like a cloud. It just kind of comes in and then it goes away.
Yeah.
Like they just come and go. But if you don't understand that, you just think, oh, this is a thought. Like this is a real thing. I need to figure this out instead of just letting it go and letting it pass. And so again, I mentioned earlier, like the acceptance thing, like you have a thought, you accept whatever thought it is. It could be so stupid, but you just accept that you're having it and you just let it sit there until it goes away.
Right.
And then you're right back on the breath.
Yeah.
And that's, it is a skill. It is 100% a skill. It took me months of practicing it every single day to where I could get to a point where I have a triggering thought or I have an obsessive thought, obviously the OCD, you obsess over something, and being able to not get attached to it, not react emotionally. That's another big thing, is not reacting positive or negative to any kind of thought. You just are kind of in this neutral, like calm state. You just objectively see the thought and then you come back to present.
Yes.
And so over time, as you can consistently do this and you work on it, build that muscle, you get to where stressful situations are going to happen, right? You're going to have things that are going to happen, but you've built this skill of awareness and control. And so you're not letting yourself freak out. You're not letting these things take control of you. Instead, it's vice versa. You're in control. You accept, okay, I'm afraid in this situation. Oh, I want to say this thing to this person. Like I'm angry or, you know, I'm scared of this happening, but you don't dwell on it. You don't let it take control. Instead, you say, okay, I'm going to stay calm. I'm just letting it happen. Like I feel this, but it is not part of me. You know, I'm trying to get the idea here of like the attachment.
Yeah. You're more resilient to the situation is what it is. I've used this technique and I've used it more from the approach of like, you know, same idea. You're sitting down for 3 to 5 minutes and then you literally just focus on your breath, but you have the sort of thought of I am breathing in and I am breathing out. And that's all you're paying. You're like, I am breathing in, I'm inhaling and I am exhaling. And you do that the whole time. And again, I used to, or there was this guru, his name was Ram Dass, and he was like one of those like master meditator guys, super laid back guy. You can find him online. But he had this, I remember him saying that like, you know, think of it like you're sitting down in front of a lake and the lake is just kind of flowing, right? And all of a sudden the butterfly comes by, it starts to find like, oh, a butterfly. And you pay attention to it, but then you come back to the lake and then it's still running is what it is. And you're just kind of in that moment, present moment is what it is, right? Like there is no future, there is no past, there's only now. That's all that matters. And that's all this is bringing you to is that awareness of the present moment. So no, that's really, really powerful stuff, man. Thanks for sharing that one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of those things that healed me almost more than anything, like being able to have resilience in your mind. And I think that was great what you were saying. Like, it's just the present moment. And there's so many ways to practice mindfulness. You know, do it while you're eating or while you're driving or whatever. Like you said, it's just taking focus on the present moment. What is happening around me? You can even use things like grounding techniques, which is another skill. But yeah, it's just being in the present moment and not getting attached to the past or the future.
Yeah, no, really powerful stuff. And just in the mindfulness, the whole mindfulness approach. I think I first learned about this from Eckhart Tolle. It was like one of his first books he wrote. And then I was kind of exposed to that. And I didn't know what to make of it at the time, but it was kind of my beginnings to the whole journey of mindfulness and what it truly meant. So, you know, that's really, really powerful stuff. So thanks for sharing that, brother. Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely.
All right. So before we wrap this up, I put a call out on my MBT school community and asked what questions people had. I said, hey, I got this master burnout specialist coming on the podcast next week. Anybody who's got questions, I'm going to give you all some answers. So really excited for this part here. This is kind of like, we're going to do like a shotgun round of Q&A through the school community. So we're going to go right through this. So I had one question here, and anything we went over, we can just kind of do a little recap as well. But first question comes from Sandra Jones, and she says, she wants to learn how to avoid burnout in current society. While there is lots of talk about self-care, employers don't acknowledge their contributions to burnout and are often not supportive. I guess changing jobs is the answer, but how do you prove the organization or the person is the cause? How do you prove whether the organization or the person is a cause? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if this is actually answering what she was specifically asking here, but I think what we were just talking about, building that mental resilience is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's going to be the first step. Instead of placing the blame on anyone or anything else, focusing on yourself and what are you doing internally to avoid that burnout.
Taking ownership.
And so if you are actively taking control of the accountability, you're working on, showing up every day and doing that 5 minutes of mindfulness, doing these different breathing techniques, if you're at work and so comes up to you and has this confrontation with you and you start to, normally you would have been pissed off all day, but you start implementing a physiological sigh or a box breathing to calm yourself down and get focused back on your work, you might just be able to stay in that same environment. You might be able to be resilient in that, maybe not ideal environment until you can get to a place where you can actually thrive. So, I think at least try to take some accountability. And if those things don't seem to work out, if you're just constantly in confrontation and just feel like this other person or this organization has sucked the life out of me, then, why are you there? Like I get, people need jobs, but it's like, there's so much more to life than just, than a paycheck. So, maybe taking the time to put yourself out there and find another opportunity that better aligns with you and is going to support you. But I think definitely taking that accountability first before blaming anybody else.
I like that approach as well. And, in this type of situation, it's like, really in any situation, you can't control the outcomes of others. You can only control what's in your own hands in your own situation, right? So it's kind of looking inward versus outward, figuring out what the situation is and what you truly want. Because I've come to realize this is a lot of people struggle with answering that question. Like, what do you want, really?
Yeah. And it just, as you were saying that, the idea of like stoicism has kind of resurfaced.
Yeah.
And I think there's some great stuff in there. I don't agree with all that, everything that stoicism is about, but there is something to say about being able to remain calm and grounded regardless of what's happening around you. You can always control how you respond to things, not what's going to happen around you. And I would even shift the mindset. We didn't really talk about mindset a whole lot, but shifting the perspective of like, oh, I'm in this awful situation, like, woe is me. And instead saying, I am facing a huge challenge that's going to make me stronger. So like, I'm in this environment. It's basically like, treat it like the gym. Like you now have this resistance that's going to make you stronger. And so instead of looking at it from a negative point of view, you could say, oh, this is going to help me build some mental resilience and some emotional regulation and all this stuff. And when I get out of this context and into something new, I'm going to have a whole new skill set that's going to make me a stronger person and enjoy life better in a different way. So, it's all about, it's all about perspective, I think.
It's reframing sort of it. It's like, hey, it's rather than saying, oh, I have to, it's like, oh no, I get to is kind of the idea here, right? Yeah. So reframing the whole mindset is a big piece here. And like I said, we're probably going to end up recording another episode where we will start to go down that rabbit hole a bit more. But I think that there's a lot of power there. So hopefully that helps you out, Sandra, gives you some insight there. Another question she had as well is, what makes the best impact on burnout? Would you say like it's diet, it's exercise? I mean, we talked about the whole holistic approach and, kind of the starting points, but is there like the lowest hanging fruit in terms of making the most change for this sort of situation?
Yeah. Man, it's so hard to just pick one. But because I think obviously it depends on the context and things that you're already doing. I think, fixing the sleep is probably the foundation. Like that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
That's going to help, again, get those systems back in place.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really talk about it, but just real fast, like one of the easiest implementable tools to fixing sleep, to fixing cortisol and all this stuff is getting sunlight first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
This is a big like Andrew Huberman thing, like,
Yeah.
but it's, again, I mentioned it earlier. So in the literature, it's called a Zeitgeber. It's these external cues that tell our body where it is in time. And light is the strongest Zeitgeber. It's the strongest external cue for where our body is in time. And that sunlight is going to actually reset almost all of that stuff. And again, everybody's different, but that's going to be the biggest
Yeah.
fix for some of those internal systems.
Yeah.
And then as far as energy goes, I mean, it will help with the cortisol and all that stuff, but another great way to get energy is to actually be physically active and exercise. It seems counterintuitive to like, oh, being active and working out is going to take energy, but our bodies are actually, it's kind of a paradox where like you're recharging your battery, so to speak, as you exercise.
Yeah.
So you end up having more energy because of mitochondrial reproduction and like all this stuff. Like, so exercise is another big one. So yeah, I think fixing sleep and then getting some physical activity, those are two of the big ones.
Yeah. Another combo I've heard as well is grounding with the sunlight. So I mean, if you're outside, you know, able to get that first peak of the sun, right, as it breaks the horizon, going barefoot on some ground and then just getting that grounding effect as well is another powerful one. Ties in the nervous system. Yeah. All right. I got Gina Mesa here. Excited to hear what he has to say. As a high anxiety person addicted to endurance sports, I've been in a state of chronic exhaustion for 20 plus years. I just started breathwork, meditation, and tense and release as recommended by my therapist a couple months ago and already feel a difference. So that kind of ties back to our conversation about like, again, regulating the nervous system. And I had conversations with this individual as well. And that's kind of the conversation we had is like, hey, you know, you've been in this constant fight, flight, you know, sympathetic state essentially. So now it's basically getting in touch with what it means to be parasympathetic. And that's the case for a lot of people is, you know, they're always go, 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 and they don't know how to turn it off. It's almost like the system's on overdrive, autopilot and overdrive, and you have to just take charge of the helm again to get back into control. So yeah, that's a really good one there. Thank you all, school members, for contributing to this one. This is a really good episode we had here. And I do this for every episode. So all the guests that I have, you know, I try to post this in advance and just get some good feedback from the community because I think it's just another good opportunity to kind of spark the conversation. But having said that, Jacob, my friend, do you have any other last words of wisdom that you wanted to kind of share here? Like I said, I mean, we're more than likely going to record another episode. This has just been way too fun, and we got so much more to talk about. But is there anything you wanted to leave the community, leave the episode of the podcast, the listeners with here?
Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me, man. It was really fun. I think we definitely need to do another one. So looking forward to that. And I would definitely be on board. But yeah, I think obviously I'm just going to plug my community and everything there just because I know people are burning out, and hopefully some of the conversations we had early on about, you know, just the acceptance and being able to admit it. Like, I think some people are struggling and they just don't want to admit it. But if you are somebody that feels like you're struggling and burning out and, you know, you're stressed all the time, you feel like you can't sleep, you have no energy, you got the mental fog, the emotional exhaustion, all the things. My community is based on helping people just like that. So if you are one of those people you identify as a high achiever or if you're just burning out, I feel free to join the community and reach out to me. I can help you personally if that's something you're interested in. But hopefully see some of y'all in there. And thank you again, Sheldon, for having me.
Absolutely. Hey, give the full plug in, man. What are your links? What are your socials? Where can people find you, brother?
Yeah. I'm not super big on Instagram or anything like that. I kind of mostly focus my attention on my school community. Yeah. So Beyond Burnout Collective is my community. It's free to join. All of my entire course, my 9-step course is on there, the Burnout Rescue Roadmap. All 45 videos, 9 steps. I mean, the whole 9 yards is there, and you can get it for free. You also have access to me. We can always schedule a call. We could just kind of talk about what it looks like for you to kind of work through your own burnout story and how to find some relief and recovery. So that's kind of the main place to find me. My email and everything is there. So
Yeah.
Until I kind of get my other social medias off the ground, that's kind of it for now.
Yeah, that's good. And I'll put any listeners out there that are listening, they're looking to get in touch with Jacob. I will have his information in the show notes. If you're already in my school community, thank you for being a member as well. And you will have access to the full research citation document. A lot of science heavy episode here. So we'll have a whole citation sheet there that I'll be sharing with the community, and you will have access also to this video episode. Awesome, Jacob. Hey, brother. Well, again, thank you again for your time. This has been great. Looking forward to getting this episode out and getting some feedback and hearing some input. But it's been a blast, brother. Looking forward to having you again in the future.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.